and I'm so excited to be joined today by Matt Jertson. The main thing that we're going to talk about today is this challenge that so many people in the industrial space and the manufacturing space are facing of how do we get good managers? And there's this age old stereotype out there that says you cannot promote an engineer, your best engineer or your best technical expert to a manager because they're just not going to have the skill set for it. And Matt is someone who not only would disagree, I think, with that stereotype, but has proactively developed a framework to help these technical managers be successful. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm so excited to get into it. Matt, thanks for being on the show.
I'm so excited to be here, Emily. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is this is just such an important discussion, honestly, in my opinion, because I don't think a lot of people, the way you phrased it, I actually don't think a lot of people are talking about needing managers. Like we're talking about, we need welders and we need technicians and we do need all of those people, 100%. But I also think as we expand this workforce, we need the people to lead those people as well. So it's a really important topic. I'm excited.
Absolutely. No, I 100% agree. I think as more and more experienced folks retire, we have more of a compressed workforce, more new people are coming in. Someone's going to have to lead them. We got to figure out how to make those people be successful. So there's a mindset shift at the center of your work that I thought was very interesting. And I think really gets to the heart of why this transition from engineer or technical expert to manager is so tough, because you really have to go from I'm the best problem solver in the room to I help other people solve problems. That sounds really simple. Why is it so hard to actually do? And can you walk us through, where you've seen that transition done really well?
Yeah, and that is the shift that is hard. And I know it's the shift that's hard, not only because it's the shift that I struggled with, though I've spent most of my corporate career, or the last 10 years, more in the HR space. I was a physics major, I was a pilot, I was the person out there doing the things. And so it was a difficult shift for me when I started my company and started talking to other people who I had known had made that shift. And I was asking them, when you went from engineering to being an engineer to being a people manager, what was the hardest thing? They all said the same thing. They all said, it's the fact that you become an engineer, you become a technical person, because you want to solve problems, right? You want to build the thing, you want to do the thing. And your entire early career, you are rewarded for that. Like that's how you get ahead. In most companies, that is why you get promoted, is because you are the person who's solving the problems the best. And so why is it hard? It's hard for all those reasons, right? Like a lot of it has to do with the way you view yourself. You view yourself as a person who has the answers. And so shifting where you get value from is really, really hard. It's the incentives. It's what you were incentivized historically to do. And so if you don't know that you're going to have different incentives, then you don't make that shift. And honestly, a lot of companies never tell people. So many companies don't have rigorous manager onboarding programs, especially early on. And we're sitting here right now in a world where so Coinbase just dramatically decreased the size of their staff. And one of the things that they said when they were explaining this change is they said there is going to no longer be anyone who is a pure people manager. All people managers will also have individual contributor responsibilities. You will also still be running projects yourself. And so it creates this really confusing world where you're having to make decisions about what are the priorities, what should I focus on. And if you have all this momentum towards doing things one way, the easiest thing to do is just keep doing them that way versus picking up this whole new set of skills that one, you've never really used before, two, you've never trained in, and three, nobody's even told you that you need. It's a challenge. Yeah, for a lot of reasons.
There's so much there that I would love to dive into. And I want to get into your framework, but I want to ask you one question based on something that you just said. One thing that I think it maybe doesn't get well explained, and I'm curious how you've tackled this, is exactly what you mentioned about not casting vision to these new managers about what they're actually doing. And could it be that rather than saying, hey, rather than you being the one who has to have the answers, we're trying to actually exponentially multiply your impact by giving you a group of people, and together
Yes.
you're going to be able to tackle more problems than you could alone? Because I think the propensity would likely be, I'm a strong problem solver. Now I have these people I have to drag along, so I'm just going to give them all the answers and not tell them your job is now, and your problem to solve is how to get your people to solve the bigger problem. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it really
100%.
does sound like a shift, not only in mindset, but also vision for how to take their skill set and actually use it in a more effective way.
It's a shift in what the problem is,
Hmm.
right? The people who I have seen most successfully move through this and who have continued to be incredibly fulfilled as a technical people manager are the ones who realized, oh, it's just a different problem that I'm trying to solve. It's not the coding, it's not
Hmm.
getting the drawings right, it's not getting people or like fixing, getting the bolts installed correctly. It's organizing the people, it's understanding the psychology, it's making it clear what we need to do. And you're 100% right in that is the way to frame it, and it is about increasing your responsibility in the leadership world. Kind of the way you described it, of the prototypical star manager or star individual contributor that becomes a manager, they use the leadership style that's known as a pace setter, where they're the ones out there. And it sounds really great when you first hear the description of you're leading from the front. You're the one who's like doing all the work, and you're showing everybody how it's done. But as you start to realize that it's almost definitionally true that if you're promoted to being a people manager because you are an expert individual contributor, the majority of people on your team aren't going to be able to keep up with you in the same way. And so it is often true, especially when you're first becoming a people leader, is that it would be faster for you to just do it yourself in any individual moment. But it's about stepping out and thinking more big picture of, oh, okay, but how do I take this whole group of people and try to transition some of my skill over to them? How do I make it so that they can do better? How do I raise the total volume of work and productivity that we have as a group? And it's never going to be, oh, I just take the lead. Oh, I just solve the problem. Because as long as that's your answer, you are always going to be the bottleneck, right? In manufacturing terms, you are always the constraint of the
Hmm.
system. And so the goal is to remove yourself as the constraint in how far you can go, because that's the only way you, because once you do that, you have limitless bounds. Even somebody like Elon Musk, who's obviously one of the most prolific business leaders of our time, one of the most tremendous innovators of our time. If it was just him working in his garage, he wouldn't have gotten very far. He
Right.
needed to bring on Tom Mueller. He needed to bring in Gwen Shotwell. He needed to bring in all these people in order to expand the influence and really get things done. And to go on a slight tangent, I think this is one of the things that holds us back is so often in pop culture, we treat it as if it is the lone genius that does everything. I recently rewatched the movie Ex Machina,
Okay.
which was just, fantastic movie about AI. And the whole premise of the movie is this sole founder who like went by himself off into the wilderness and built everything. And he built his own AI engine. He built his own humanoid robot. He was tinkering around. And like, if you look in the real world, that just never happens. It doesn't work that way, especially if you're really trying to have a big impact.
Right. Well, and the big impact is the key, right?
Yeah.
Because if you want to stay at the pace that you can move as an individual, or your best person, great. But if you want to grow, or you want to scale, or you need to get beyond that, you're going to have to shift and be able to share that thing that makes you a high performer as much as you can with
Yeah.
other people, which I think makes a ton of sense. So let's dive into your framework for how people actually do that. Thought it was really interesting. I started reading your book, which we'll talk about, the minimum viable manager, which I think is such a fun way to think about it. That it doesn't have to be, necessarily this huge course. You don't have to go get a degree in management to be able to become a good manager. There can be basic first principles for management. And the three key ones that I think really stood out from the book were getting people to work together, getting them to work on the right things, which makes sense, and then helping them improve over time. So, how have you seen it help? How have you seen those fundamentals really help technical leaders make that shift into management?
I think technical people especially are always looking for something very tangible that they can, we're used to seeing things in the real world and really and making things a reality. We're in a very, one of the phrases right now that's very prominent that you already used is first principles, which is all about kind of removal, right? It's about thinking like it's questioning it, like, is this really a thing? Do we really need to do this? And I think in the leadership space for so long, we've talked in very large terms, like, oh, you need to have executive presence. It's like, well, what is executive presence? I don't know what that is. And so it was after my time at SpaceX and knowing how much success you can have of constantly trying to think back to like, what are the base principles that we need to do here? Those were the three that I landed on, of getting people to work together, getting them working on the right things, and improving the work over time. And I think, to me, you can't argue with the fact that that's it. Like, those are the things you have to do, right? If you're not getting people, if what's a leader without a follower? Just a person walking down the street, right? Like, so like if you can't get people to work together, and the nice thing about this too, that I also think we miss in leadership development very often, is we pretend that like this is the way, right? That situational leadership is the way, or the coin method for feedback is the way. These are all a way. And this is where I thought a lot about my time as a pilot, where when we were teaching people how to fly planes as an instructor, you were always very clear about whether what you were doing was technique or procedure. Right? Procedure was the rules. These are the things that you have to do in order to stay inside the airspace and not run into another plane. You have to do this. But techniques are ways to accomplish the procedure, right? They're options, and every pilot will have their own technique. And so, to me, when I think about the first principles leadership of those three buckets, those are kind of these are the things you need to do. But then how you do them is going to be different for every person. Minimum Viable Manager, the book, is meant to offer, here's a way to do all of these things. I've found in all the people that I've talked to, these are kind of like the simplest first things that you could try to do in order to accomplish these three things. But one of the things, I work after I left the military, the two companies that I worked at I was working for Elon Musk and I was working for Travis Kalanick. And if you are an HR person, you're looking at these people and saying, how on earth, like, they shouldn't have successful companies. They break all the rules of what we say is a good leader, yet they clearly have very successful companies. What's going on? And it's because leadership looks different for every person and every culture and every organization. And so it's about knowing, I think, the three buckets of getting people to work together, getting them to work on the right things, and improving the work over time, give you a clear bedrock of, this is what I need to accomplish. And then I, as a leader, can think back on, what are my proclivities? What speaks to me? What kind of organization am I trying to build? And that is how you then find your path to your technique for accomplishing those things.
That makes a lot of sense. And I can see where it gives not only a simple model or framework for identifying what to do next if you're stepping into that type of position, but also for troubleshooting. Like, you're sitting there and you're running into issues. And I think the biggest thing that can cause people to spin out or, turn into a deer in the headlights is they just don't know where to start. Like, I don't even know what to look at, what test to run to see where I'm having problems. And so if you can go, okay, are my people working together?
Yeah.
Okay, I think they are. Are they working on the right things? I think so. Okay. And you can kind of work your way through that.
Yeah, because exactly there is, it's a really important way, and to put some simple questions there to think about, like, where am I as a manager? Where am I spending all of my time?
Hmm.
Am I spending my time getting between personality conflicts on the team, and people can't share stuff with one another? They're not being honest with one another. Everybody comes to me with problems, and I'm like the hub of the spoke, and like reaching out to the spokes in the wheel to pass information because people aren't talking to each other. That's a sign that they're not, your constraint. There might be other problems. There's always going to be other problems, but your constraint, if you're spending all of your time on like personality disputes or passing information between people, then your constraint is the people on my team aren't working together. They don't trust each other. So I need to focus on that. If separately, the worry is, or the place you're spending all your time is, I'm making all the decisions on my team. Everybody comes to me to say, what should I do next? What's the next thing? What's the priority? People are spending time on things that I don't think is important. Well, then clearly you're not being clear enough about the expectations. You're not making it clear what the right thing to work on is. Right. And so if all of your time is spent just like making decisions for people, then that's probably the lane you need to focus on. And then the final one of of improving the work over time. This could be a number of things. Like one, it might be that people don't have the resources that they need, and they keep saying they don't have the resources that they need. It might be that they don't have the skills that they need. And so if you're spending all of your time kind of like correcting little mistakes or making up for schedule that's slipping, then it might be that last bucket where you need to spend your time.
Hmm. Oh, I feel like we could dive into so many interesting scenarios and things based off
Yes.
of this because it does give you so many interesting sort of places to look and things to think about. Because I would imagine, like, if you got your people working together well and working on the right things effectively, your work would probably improve over time. Like, I'm sure
They're
there's
all
elements of, yeah, them all working together.
There's definitely a reason why in the book we present it as the graphics, and this isn't out yet. It comes out in August, but this is all presented as a Venn diagram because they
Right.
do all overlap, and many techniques that people use in leadership can touch on all three.
That makes sense. Uh, So I know you've mentioned your time at SpaceX, and I think that, as you said, Elon and I'm sure many members of the team there are very interesting leaders. And you were really came. My understanding is you came straight out of your military experience into SpaceX. So not the easiest company to get into, I would imagine. So would love to hear how you managed to land in SpaceX, and then um, you were in learning and development there. So, were you learning these principles there? Were you applying them there? Like, what did that process look like? And how did you kind of see these things um, come together during the time that you were at SpaceX?
This is why I love that we're on the platform of LinkedIn, because the sole reason I got into SpaceX was because of LinkedIn.
Let's
It
go.
is a pure networking play for people managers. I really think like networking for everybody. Networking is a big thing that we all need to work on. I think we always think that like if I'm just good enough, then I'll get the job, or if I'm good enough, it'll all work out. And we just live in a world with so much noise these days. Networking is critical. Like the specifics of what I did is I just blindly reached out to every Air Force veteran that was working in a leadership position at SpaceX, and
I love it.
one of them responded, and we started talking, and they just asked me like, "Well, we need help with training. Have you ever done that?" I was like, "I'm an instructor pilot. Sure, I can train people." So that was the interesting way I got in.
That's
And
amazing.
to your last point, yeah, 100% of the things in this book and just the idea of first principles leadership I learned from my time at SpaceX. And really it was trying to, we talk a lot about leadership in the military, obviously. But it was trying to, square the circle of like, we're talking about things in this way, but this is what I see working over here. Not only are leading in the military and leading in the corporate world just completely different things, but just kind of the even the way I saw people talking about it changed. And so it was all 100% reflections from watching leaders at SpaceX, watching leaders after SpaceX. I have the privilege now of because I got connected with so many people in SpaceX. I'm well connected with all these, the SpaceX diaspora, as it's called, of these dozens and hundreds of startups that are spinning up, mainly because of this hard tech revolution that we're seeing. And so I'm getting to see all these people in real time, just be like, oh, that one's working, that one's not. What's going on here? That's really interesting. And so it's like a big petri dish right now in terms of leadership and seeing what works and what doesn't. So it's fantastic.
That's awesome. One thing that I'd be interested in, and I'm curious how you would think this would apply or if it applies in a similar way. I know for a lot of folks, going from leadership in the military to leadership in the civilian world, a lot of people that are in either officers or higher level enlisted ranks can often jump straight into a leadership role, but it just can be so challenging to make that shift because, as you said, it's completely different languages, completely different styles. And I know that's not the primary point of what we're talking about, but curious if you have any thoughts or insights, especially since you kind of experienced it. Number one, on did you see that being so different? How did you make that transition yourself? And number two, could someone in the military take these principles and apply them, in a slightly different context to help them sort of make that transition?
Yeah, I think there is a big difference. It's always going to depend on the company that you're shifting to and what their culture is. Because there's plenty of organizations. Sure. If you go to Boeing, if you go to Lockheed Martin, chances are it's a pretty similar kind of feel to the large organizational hierarchy that you have in the military. For me, the single biggest thing that I had to realize was in the military, it's very hierarchical. You just go find the person in charge. If it's the group commander, you convince the group commander. They say good, and you're good, right? Like everybody, they say good, and you're good, and now you can go do your thing or whatever. You have permission. Whereas in the corporate world, at least in my experience, it's much more. Even if you find the VP or the director and they say good, all that means is you now have permission to go convince everybody else. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to happen. And that's where, this idea of getting people to work together, I think is a very different world. That's probably the single biggest difference in the corporate world from the military. One, because of that hierarchy that I mentioned, but also
Right.
because in the military, you all have this several common things that you can fall back on. You probably had a similar reason why you joined the military. You all went through boot camp. You there's these experiences that you've been through that you can fall back on. Whereas in the corporate world, it's just so much more diverse. It's a more diverse reason for people to take jobs, more diverse background of the things people have done before they started that job. And so you just have to be. There's a lot of things that you can take for granted in the military realm that you can't in the private sector. And so I think that's the biggest difference that you in making that shift. And 100%, I think leaders could take this and go the other way and apply these things in the corporate world. I think there's a lot of questions that you just don't even think to ask very often as a leader. But if you ask them, I think your unit's just going to be that much better.
Oh, that's a great point. I wanted to ask you, well, a couple of things as we move towards the end. One, I would love to hear a story of, whether it's from your consulting work or from SpaceX. Is there one story that stands out or two where, you had someone technical that got promoted, was really struggling, and you were able to help see this transformation by bringing in some of these tools or this framework? Because I think it's always so helpful for people to be able to hear themselves in a story and understand, oh, okay, this is how it actually works.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing to me is I like to contrast organizations, right? And you think about organizations that adopt these principles or don't. I believe it or not, I worked with an organization where it was the prototypical, we're promoting individual contributors, we're promoting them really quickly, we're not giving them a lot of resources. And this organization had, I believe it was an 8% attrition per month that was happening. And it really was. And I think this is probably the kind of organization that a lot of people are going to identify with I was really good at my job. The organization was growing really quickly. So I got promoted and I had to figure out what to do, and I didn't know what to do. So I kept doing my old job, right? I just kept doing, I just kept doubling down on the thing that got me promoted. And that was the result at an organizational level of like just like really high attrition. I've worked with plenty of managers who they honestly, like, this is where manager burnout comes from, I think, because they don't have a new playbook. They just keep executing the old playbook harder and harder and harder, and it's not helping them. And the opening story from the book is actually kind of me experiencing that burnout, honestly, of like, if like, to make it personal, like a personal story of me. The opening story of the book is me literally running out in a near panic attack when I was working at SpaceX because I didn't know what to do. I just kept working harder, working harder, working harder at trying to solve all the problems, and it wasn't working. And the shift was then that I saw in myself and more organizationally of realizing I need to be the one that steps back. I need to be the one that's not in every meeting or in every email chain or making every decision. I'm not the one that's special. I need to make my team special. And so if we shift over to other organizations that have been successful at that, those are the ones that don't have the high attrition. Those are the ones that you see winning the NASA contracts and exceeding expectations. And I won't say they're beating timelines, because nobody beats timelines in the hard tech space, but they're at least, they're trying to hold to them, and they're at least delivering something.
Right.
So I think, from an individual story level, that's what I experienced. Is it really was the shift from complete burnout, near panic attacks, to a world where I feel like I have some breathing space. I can really enjoy my job again because we're doing this together and I don't have to feel like I'm alone. And then at an organizational level, it really is the difference between high attrition, low engagement, and high engagement, low attrition, like high productivity. It makes a world of difference.
That absolutely makes sense. Tell me, since we touched on it a few times, just in closing, tell me about the minimum viable manager. Who's it for? What do you want people to walk away with? And then, of course, even though it doesn't come out for a couple more months, where can people keep their eyes out for it?
Yeah, so it's to keep your eyes out for it. So it's meant to come out in August. It's going to come out in August of this year. So we got a couple months. Keep tabs with me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be talking about it a lot there, and you'll be able to find it for sure, because especially over the next couple months, I'm definitely going to be bringing it up. And this is a book that is for anyone who's in that position, whether you're, wanting to become a manager, you're a first-time manager, maybe you've been a manager for years. I know directors who have never really gotten formal leadership training. And if you're looking for super simple techniques, right? So we talked about this first principles leadership, this idea of getting people to work together, getting them to work on the right things, and improving their work over time. Minimum viable manager is, what's the first thing you can do in each one of those buckets? So here's 2 techniques for building trust with your team. Here's 2 techniques for setting expectations with your team. And here's 2 techniques for giving feedback to your team. That's it. It's meant to be really simple, a playbook that you can just go start doing. And if they don't work, great. Like, now you have a direction for you to go find new tools and techniques that you can use. But those are the people it's for. And that's really what I just want people to walk away with, a really simple set of tools that they feel like they can go start using immediately.
Excellent. I know people can find you on LinkedIn, and you also have a podcast. Tell me quickly about that, where people can find that.
Yes, the Leadership Launchpad is a weekly podcast where I talk with all kinds of leaders who are going through this themselves. So these are sometimes they're founders, sometimes they're frontline managers, and everything in between. People who are in the hard tech space, going through these problems of being like, hey, we have this big technical problem that we're trying to solve, this big thing we're trying to accomplish for the future, but how do we organize the people side of that in order to make sure that happens? I absolutely love it. The discussions I'm learning things every single week. So I know other people will too.
I love that. That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to hopefully connecting again in the future.
Thank you